All right, welcome everybody to this episode of the Training Simplified podcast. I am here today and excited to bring in a special guest. We've got Karla Eidem, PMP, who's the Regional Managing Director for North America at the Project Management Institute, or PMI. Karla, welcome to the show. Excited to have you today.
Oh my gosh, me too. Thanks for having me, Sam.
It's great to have somebody from PMI. My history goes back a long time with PMI. PMI goes back a long ways as well. But for those that are unfamiliar, I'd love to just give a little bit of context for folks listening around what is it that PMI does and what is it that you do within PMI?
Of course, happy to. Project Management Institute is the global authority in project management for over 55 years. And like you mentioned, I'm a PMP, so I've been a practitioner actually for the last 20 years before I became an employee of PMI. And at PMI, our purpose is to maximize project success to elevate our world. And we know that in this day and age, there's more transformations that's happening, more innovation, and therefore there's a growing need for projects and the talent to lead them. So at PMI, we have our PMI Next, which is our strategy. So I'll just give you the 3 pillars of our strategy and give our audience a little bit of insight on who we are. We hold the gold standard certifications in project management. That's one pillar. We have a vast community, and in the North America region, which I lead alone, we have over 500,000 certification holders. And that's a community that we lean into for generating knowledge. And the 3rd pillar of our strategy is about career-long learning and development. And as practitioners, as professionals, we can't rest on our laurels and we need to be students of our own profession. And it's always encouraged, clearly, to have a plan on how you can continue to upskill and reskill and make sure that you have the tools to be good at your job or be better even at your job. And so one of our gold standard certifications is the PMP. We celebrated its 40th year last year. So it's 41 years old now. And we do have other learning resources and, like I said, a global and local community. So in the US, we have 133 chapters, and those chapters are completely run by volunteers. There's a separate entity, but they represent PMI. And I was a chapter leader here at South Dakota, actually. So I came from the volunteer world, and there's 18 in Canada and 1 in the Caribbean. And around the globe, we have over 300 chapters. So it's a pretty big community of project professionals. And right now, what we're seeing is that, project management truly is needed regardless of your industry. Most people think, and even, 20, 30 years ago, they think that project management is only for IT or technology industries. But right now, we're seeing it not even just in industries, but in roles like HR leaders, where I met you at SHRM. So I think that's another opportunity that we're seeing where the project management skills could really help our HR leaders drive impact where it matters the most.
Well, first of all, I think you're spot on, and I can't wait to dive into the HR field and its impact on HR. But I also love just the philosophy of the 3-pillar philosophy, that it's not just the certification that I know you all are known for. It's kind of the bread and butter, but this communities of practice and continual education, because it is evolving. The nature of project management in the last 40 years has evolved so much with technology, I feel like. And so it's great to hear that it's not just the certification, but how do we keep learning and getting better? And that's certainly been my experience with it over the years. I think I mentioned as we were catching up, I took all of the training, but never got certified. I was one step away years ago because it was how we thought about it. When I got introduced to it, to the PMP certification, we were training engineers, we were training IT folks in project management, and I got the benefit of sitting in on the training and sitting in on some things to learn it alongside of them, but it wasn't designed for me. But turns out it actually ended up being very valuable for my career. So I got to see firsthand the benefit of it. I would love to hear a little bit. You mentioned SHRM, which is where we met, a massive conference, 25,000 people. And you were talking about project management for HR, and your whole your session filled up. They had to close the doors because it was such a popular topic. I would love to dive in. Like, what is it about project management for HR that you think is so beneficial or struck such a chord in your experience?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was great to meet you at SHRM. That was the first time that PMI was showing up at SHRM, actually, and we weren't quite sure what it would look like. So we had a panel, and I invited a group that is experts in their fields, different parts of HR, to talk about project management and what it does. You know, it's really how things get done. And to share with you, when I started the panel, I asked the room, just wanted to check who's in the audience. Like, do we have any PMPs in the room? And there were only like a couple of hands that were raised. But then when I asked the question, how many of you are leading projects? Every single hand was raised. And there were almost 400 of them in the room. And we know that. And that's why we came to SHRM in the first place, because we know that HR leaders are already leading projects, programs and tech rollouts and policy changes and culture initiatives and really at the forefront of turning ideas into action. And so the objective for that panel was to really paint a picture for our HR leaders that, well, A, you do not need to be an official project manager to have project management skills and gain all the advantages and the tools and the benefits of having project management skills. Because project professionals, at the end of the day, whether you're an HR leader or a true blue PM, you act like translators and bridge builders. You're connecting strategy to execution. You're connecting leadership with employees and stakeholders. But at the end of the day, you cannot translate something you do not understand, right? So you have to have that background, the tools, the mindset to know how to translate the strategy into execution and to connect all of your stakeholders. And what I highlighted in that panel too, Sam, it's a weird analogy, so bear with me for a minute here. I've heard this in one of the sessions that I attended a few years ago, one of the conferences I attended years ago. So it's a little different visual of the 3 ears analogy. I do have only 2, but as a project professional, the 3 ears really means that you as a project professional or someone that leads the projects need to balance listening to leadership, listening to employees, and listening to the needs of your customers or your stakeholders. Because otherwise, you could be leading a project that will not be accepted by your employees, or yes, it aligns to the strategy, employees are bought in, but at the end of the day, the customers are thinking, why do we have this in the first place? Or that they don't see the value of that. And so this is where project management truly comes in helping HR leaders, because with those skills, you are going to be able to balance the views and the needs of the 3 stakeholders, or having those 3 ears, but navigating the change, building the trust, and at the same time positioning yourself also as a strategic leader and not just someone that leads tasks or checks tasks off your lists.
I think that analogy is so appropriate, because I've seen so many times in my career, HR is often the voice of the people. They're out there on the front lines. They hear from frontline employees about what's going on or what needs to change. And so I feel like that ear, they're tuned really well on the HR side. But being able to translate that into, well, what's our leadership saying? And what are other stakeholders saying across the business? And what's the overall impact on the company? Bringing all of that together is the skill that allows you to succeed. You can't just be the voice of the people. You've got to be the voice of the company and weigh all of these different stakeholders at the same time for a project to be successful.
100%.
It's so interesting, because I think when we talk about it, in our experience or my experience within HR, it's the ability to get stuff done. And ultimately, I feel like that's what you all are providing, and what you're teaching are the skills to not just have the idea that something needs to change or something needs to be different, but what are the skills to go from idea to listening to actually implementing and finishing a project, which in my 20-year HR career, many HR folks suffer from that inability to finish a project or get it to completion. We can get it 50, 60, 70% of the way, and then for some reason it falls apart. The skills that you all are providing are, how do you get it to completion and ensure that everybody's bought in with that? Talk to me about that a little bit, because that skill to get things to completion is tough in this world where people are managing multiple projects, multiple teams. How do you balance something like that in order to make sure that we're not just talking about things, but we're actually driving work to completion and achieving the desired outcomes.
Right. And beyond just driving to completion, at the end of the day, is that what you were hoping to achieve in the first place? Right? Like, because
Yes.
as I'm sure you can relate, there are many projects that get completed and then people end up thinking, why did we do this? Or what were we trying to solve in the first place? So, yeah, but I think, Sam, what I really appreciated with being a practitioner, but also being a part of PMI, is that it's not just the skills, but there's definitely advantage to knowing what tools to pull to solve the right problem. And I'm going to give you another analogy because I love analogies.
I love keep them coming. This is great.
And although I do not know much about construction, let me just tell you that. But I like this analogy because, and I use this analogy a lot. Could I use a screwdriver to pound a hammer? Maybe, right? But what is the likelihood that I will hurt myself? Probably a little bit higher than a hammer, right? And what about efficiency? Will I have enough power to really pound the nail, right? Instead of using a hammer. And that's what the tools and the mindset and the skills that project management gives someone leading a project. Because imagine this, you have all these stakeholders, for example, and they come from different backgrounds and different roles, etc. And I'll give you a simple tool. In my head, I know already that I need to understand where they are in my power interest grid, right? And by power, I mean who can make those decisions, who can influence budget, etc. And if they're in the grid, it's a 2x2, very simple. But if they're in the grid where they are the ones that make the decision but have very less interest in what I'm doing, in the project that I'm doing, then I know that my next strategy is to ensure that I have the right communication tools, the right touch points, right? So that I can put the value in front of that leader so I can shift him or her into the part of the grid where he doesn't only have the power to make the decision, but he's interested and understands the value of what we're doing. So very simple tool, but because I've learned that through project management and being a PMP, I know right away in my head at every project that I do, that's a tool that I can pull. Could I use other tools? Sure. But for what I'm trying to solve in that instance, I would think that might be the most effective. That might be the hammer to the nail and not the screwdriver to the nail. So that's how I like to think of it as, it's not just about necessarily the skills, but knowing right away, or at least you're quicker to identify what tools you're going to use to solve the problem at hand.
It makes so much sense because there's so many different ways to get a project done. And what you're saying is, or what I hear you saying is, there are more efficient ways to do it sometimes. You could beat a nail with a screwdriver or a hammer with a screwdriver, but there are more efficient, more practical ways to do it. And so you might still get the end result, but you're going to suffer a lot. There's going to be a lot of pain getting there. You all have the tools to say, let's get to the end result a little bit easier, a little bit faster, with a lot less pain as well at the end of the day.
Right. Exactly. And it's what project management teaches you. And we also talk about not just knowing the methodology or the framework, but balancing the other skills you have to learn, right? That's the technical skills. But the more important skill, I would say, well, you have to balance the three of them. We call them the talent triangle. But there are two other legs of the triangle you have to balance. And one leg of that triangle is the power skills or the people soft skills. Right? Strategic, collaborative leadership and communication and influencing others. But you also have the business acumen, which is, do you know how to identify risks? And do you understand how the business works so that you know how to lead the project? Because oftentimes we're so stuck into, well, I must use this versus this, but we're missing the point because we don't understand the business. So as a project professional, you have to balance that. You know the tools, right? That's one leg. You know the tools, you know the frameworks, the mindset, you know the business, you know financials, you understand the risk, how to mitigate them, but you also know I would personally call the capital P of PM, which is people. At the end of the day, you are working with people day in, day out, so much like our HR leaders. That's what you do. You just work with people because you can't achieve anything without the people in your team.
That's exactly right. And it is, I think so often, to make it real for our HR folks listening, so many of our projects come back to a lot of change management. A lot of what we're doing is saying the org is this way, and we need to change the way the org is operating. And the old school way of doing this in HR was, let's write a policy and we'll send out a policy and then we'll manage to the policy. But there are more effective ways than just writing. You might need a policy, but if I think about change management and some of the actual work that gets done on the HR side, you've got every year things like an annual review process or a talent review process. All of that is a project over the course of a year where you're implementing new tools or changing things. You've got other areas like an annual engagement survey or employee surveys where you're putting on surveys. You've got company conferences, training sessions. All of these are scheduled events that happen, but require change management and stakeholder buy-in, understanding the business. I like this triangle analogy because it is, you've got to understand all of those for all of these processes that you're running on a day-to-day basis. And if you miss one of those, you might run an annual review process, but miss one of the core pillars, which is like, well, what's the impact of the business for this? Or what's the business trying to accomplish by giving performance ratings, giving salary increases, any of the ramifications that come from it. It's not just about people and finishing the process, but there's a huge impact to everything we do on the business itself as well. That's really valuable.
And HR leaders often act as that change manager, right? And you mentioned earlier, they're tuned in. They know what the people are saying or how they would react to things. And so just having the tools and the mindset and the framework at the back of your head, at least automatically when you're thinking of a project, you're thinking what would be the impact of the people. Every project has a people component anyway, right? So understanding your stakeholders and is my communication clear and transparent, and, you know, not just managing up, but managing even with your peers and then down and balancing all of that, because we have many of those HR projects where, yes, we've checked, we've done the policy, we've communicated it, but then at the end of the day, we see that, shoot, they don't understand what we're trying to say.
Yes.
Right? They're aware, sure, they're aware that it's happening, but do they even want the change, or do they even see why they should have the change? And now I'm alluding to, you know, the simple ADKAR framework where you're moving them from awareness to desire and to knowledge and, you know, just going through all of the phases of the change. But you're spot on there, Sam. I think every project really needs to have that hat of change management as well. And it's definitely, you know, the PM, sometimes you don't get a change manager, but if you're a PM and you have that change management at the back of your mind, you could at least make sure that every process change, you are able to evaluate the impact of the people.
I think that's right. And rarely in HR do we get these project managers or change managers on the team. And I think this is where when we hit it off, it was because I realized that I had obtained this skill a lifetime ago, and I didn't realize that I had the skills until I needed them. But I had learned the skills of project manager when I was the head of learning at Chipotle. It was during a very tense time, which was the E. coli crisis of 2016. And prior to that, as we led new menu items or new equipment that was going out into the restaurant, it was a very long process. We would take months or a year to change something in the restaurant to make sure that we had stakeholder buy-in, we had all the materials right, we could lead it effectively. And it was a long process to make sure that we didn't overburden thousands of restaurants at the time. We were trying to change thousands of people at one time, from senior leaders all the way down to frontline employees that had to change a procedure. So it was a very thought out process, but Chipotle had been doing it for years. So it was just part of how we operated. And in the middle of the crisis, we didn't have 7 months to roll something out. We had to take that same 7-month process, and we were rolling out new procedures every week. And so we took a 7-month process, streamlined it into a 1-week process. But the only way we were able to do that, and this is where project management came in, I learned the skill of the critical path exercise, which is, you've got all this stuff that needs to happen, but there is a path of things that this has to happen, and then this, and then this. And there is a path when you figure those out of this is what it actually takes to get the project done. Everything else you can stack or streamline together. But once you know the critical path, you can then figure out how to get something done without missing any of the major components, but get it done more quickly. In doing it, that's what we did. We laid out what does it take to roll out this procedure? What does it take to get everybody on board and figured out 1,000 Post-it notes on a table to figure out our critical path to say, okay, we have this needs to be done on day 1. This can now move to day 2. What used to be month 1, month 2, month 3 turned into day 1, day 2, day 3 in order to get these procedures out and enable us to change over the entire restaurant over the course of a few months, all through, I didn't know it at the time, but it was bringing back the critical path exercise and the skills of project management. Without having that, we didn't have a project manager on the team. It was us just figuring it out. But the value in doing something like that and having that tool, the right tool at the right time, exactly what you're saying, took a 7-month project down to a 1 week. Don't recommend 1 week menu changes for anybody ever, but in a pinch, the right tool can enable that kind of change successfully.
Exactly. But I was smiling the whole time because I love hearing stories of where you see the magic happen, right? Like you didn't even expect that that's really going to help you get it done with that much pressure, with that less of time than you anticipated. But I suppose, Sam, you were feeling a little bit more confident because you have the skills, at least. You know that you have something to use at the moment, and you're not scratching your head thinking, how am I supposed to do this? So, wow, that's really impressive, because in a situation like that where it's unfortunate, but still you could see the value of such skills to get things done the right way and to make and to drive project success, right? I think that just positions you truly at that time as a leader, because I suppose everyone was looking at you like, what are we supposed to do now? You know, it's like 7 months and now we have to do it now. And so I can only imagine the chaos, but you were navigating with tools successfully and cutting through the noise. So thanks for sharing that. And I can certainly relate to that, because my last, not my last project, the projects before I took the PMI role, I was with Stanford Health. And interestingly, it was during the pandemic that I was leading the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. So talk about not knowing what timelines you have or how much you're going to get. There was a new drug that was being developed every time, right? Was it Pfizer? Was it Moderna? You don't know when they're going to come. And then they finally tell you when they're going to come. And then you are going to get told state by state how many you're going to get. So there were so many changes and so many things happening. But at the same time, the confidence and the calmness that I have in leading that is truly because of the tools that I know that are with me, that I have the tools that I can pull from that belt and really know how to do it. And at one point, we had a situation where we were about to roll out, and our COO was leading that incident command, and he had missed a few days because he was working on something more pressing at that time. And when he rejoined the meeting, he was asking, what are we going to do now? Of course, he needed to catch up, right? And that was the opportunity really for me as the project manager at that point to speak up and build that trust and to tell him that we've got this. We have a plan. But did I show him the entire how many pages of plan? I didn't. I already prepared a 1-pager, and I just said, can I show you this high level flow that we have and who's in charge and whatever? And he's like, sure. And so I put it on the screen and I walked him through what we're going to do. And I told him that we've got this. Each region has their role and we know what to do. And he asked me this question and I chuckled because he's a very serious guy. And he said, so are you telling me that I'm just in the way of your plan right now because I keep asking questions? And the room was tense, but I know he was joking clearly, but the room was tense. And I said, kind of, because we've got this, boss, we've got this. And of course he gave me a little smile, not a full smile, but he gave me a little smile. But that's when I knew that there was confidence in what we were doing, that there was trust, that he could rely on the team, that the people knew what we were doing. And even before we ended that conversation, I offered to him, would it help if I give you a report at 8, noon, and 5 so you know where we are? And he's like, yeah, that would be great. End of discussion, right? Like, I think there's that opportunity to really ensure that you're not just looking at your project team and making them, work towards the common goal and making progress on the project, but you've got stakeholders to manage, and you've got to build that trust and that confidence with them so that they know that you're the one leading the charge and you're the one leading the team to get things done, and not necessarily make them nervous. I think when they have that peace of mind that it is happening, it is going to be okay, that's when you know as a project professional that you are doing your job actually.
That's exactly right. And it's so hard to quantify that confidence, but you're exactly right that it's not even confidence for yourself. You know that once you've gone through the tools and the steps, you feel confident, like, okay, we can do it. I feel confident that we can do it. But then that confidence is contagious to the people around you. It kind of sheds off of you to let your COO know, or the team around you know, like, no, we can do this. There is a plan. There's something we can refer back to. That gives everybody a little bit more confidence that, no, let's just stick to the plan. Let's do it. Because without it, we're just guessing and we're praying and hoping that things happen. And it's hard to be confident when you're just hoping for success. Much easier when you've gone through the practice and the tools to feel like, no, we got it and we can handle it. We can, like, there's even room to change. I understand what needs to happen. You're exactly right. That confidence is one of the hardest things to be able to get to, but having that confidence to stand up in a room in front of your peers or executive team and say, we're good, we've got it, this is the plan, here's what I need from you. The whole room breathes a sigh of relief then around you to go like, okay, I trust that person because they seem confident and they can back it up with whatever tools they've got behind them. That's so powerful on the confidence side.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And in fact, I was just connecting with a former coworker from Sanford Health, and she was sharing with me that was one of her favorite memories of me, when the room was just so tense because the COO was asking all these questions, and here I am just raising my hand. It does take courage, and sometimes it has to be you as the project professional. You don't need to look anywhere else. You know what the plan is. You know how to get it done. So speak up. Right? And speak up with confidence, and don't bother with so many of the details and, showing all of the tools and things like that, but present what matters to your audience. And she was sharing, she would chuckle every time she would remember it because it was so tense. And then I still made the comment of, well, yeah, kind of, you're in the way of my plan and this is happening. Like, it's okay. We got this. And it's the confidence that you give back to your project team. You're absolutely spot on, Sam. It wasn't about me. It was about the project team. It was lifting them up and showing to the CEO that everybody knows their role. We are doing this together, and you just got to trust us.
That's exactly.
And we did. And it worked out. And when you say you're going to deliver something by 8, noon, and 5, you better be delivering at 8, noon, and 5. That's another way to build trust.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I think there's one more before we jump on. I know you've got a great framework to show us here about how you maximize success. But I think in this day and age, there's so many HR professionals that are being asked to do more with less. There's less resources. Teams are being streamlined, especially in the advent of AI. I think one of the things I've seen, I went through a restructuring 2 years ago or 3 years ago where the team just got significantly smaller. Beauty of these skills was that we were able to map out what is critical and see, almost same exercise, what's the critical path for each project. But what you're able to do then is also stack projects on top of each other to understand resource utilization. So it's not even about achieving one project or completing one project. The skill then, when you stack them across 5, 6, 7 projects, allows you to get more done in the exact same amount of time, simply because you're understanding that we're going to have a lull in this week or 2 week for approvals. Well, what else can we do in that week or two to move another project along? And as you balance those things out, you're able to see that all of a sudden you can get 4, 5, 6 projects working concurrently with the same resources that don't overlap when you do it intelligently, that all of a sudden you can do more with the same resources just by being smart and thoughtful about when you're scheduling, when you're placing things, who you're asking of what, when. But by stacking those projects on top of each other in a very thoughtful and intelligent way, you're now able to actually do what the business is asking, which is do more with less or do more with the same resources. That seems like a skill that's generally applicable, like HR, but across industries or across projects and tools. Is that something you see even beyond HR?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not even thinking of project management as industry agnostic. I truly believe it's even role agnostic, right? Regardless of your role, there's benefit to gaining those skills. And I love your example because that's definitely one of the knowledge areas in PMP, right? Like resource management. Because you might be thinking, oh, my project needs 10 people in IT to do that. But another project might be competing with your priority and need the same people for their project. So your ability or your skill in managing resources could definitely really benefit the organization. And regardless of your industry, whether you're in tech, in HR, in health, in healthcare, in construction, we see more of that in the different roles. And we as Project Management Institute, we actually started looking into and had our biggest research ever because we wanted to see what truly is the definition of project success, right? You have all these skills, you have all these tools, but how do you drive successful projects? And we had a research, it was the largest PMI research that we completed last year. There were over 10,000 stakeholders from over 100 countries. I just mentioned earlier that we are this global community, right? And we tap into our community for that knowledge. And you know what? It revealed something bigger for us. And that definition of project success really goes beyond the traditional definition of project success. And you might know this from your training, the on time, on budget, on scope, right? And we're not saying that's out the window. That's just table stakes. Like that's just a basic requirement now. But the modern project success now is defined as delivering value worth the time and the investment or the expense.
That seems like a very important distinction.
Right, exactly. And that's why I paused there for a minute because I could see you're thinking about that. But yes, that's absolutely right. Because an example would be, yes, you're on time, you're on budget, but if the solution you created was not delivering the value that was worth the time and the investment, would the stakeholders consider that as successful? Actually, in that research, it says not, right? There are more things and that you need to be considering. So this was a shift in mindset that came out of that research. And so with that, we created a framework and it's called MORE or MORE. But let me be clear, it's not about doing more work. So I don't want our audience here to get nervous about that. But what that means, what that framework is, and I can share more about that here shortly.
I'll pull it up as you talk. I'll pull it up so we can look at it while you do it.
All right. It's doing work that delivers more value. So not necessarily more things, but the work that delivers more value. And I'll go through quickly what it stands for, and I'll give you a couple of examples. And I'd like to hear your thoughts too, based on your background, Sam, and the work that you've done before when it comes to projects. The M is managing perceptions. And in that example that I gave you with the COO, right? At that moment, the perception was because he was catching up, do we even have a plan? Like, are we ready? Are we good to go? But as a project professional, it is your responsibility to ensure that the value is visible, that you are managing those stakeholders, that they can see, they can link up, and they can connect that, okay, what we're doing right now is working, it has value. So it is a challenge to project professionals, and not just telling them that, oh yeah, we are only 80% of the budget. Yes, they care about that because that's the investment. But more importantly, are we using the investment to where it really creates value? So that's the M or the managed perceptions. And of course, O is own project success beyond project management success. So project management success, that's the traditional definition, on time, on budget, on scope. We have to take it to the next level. We have to connect the work to the organization's strategic goals. So like I said, it's the on time, on budget, on scope. Of course, you have to think about them. But more than that, how do you take it to the next level and truly connect that work to the strategy? And then the R is relentlessly reassessing parameters, because the metrics that you may have established at the beginning of the project, the project evolves and it changes. And, there were so many things that you probably did not anticipate that's happening now. How do you adapt to changing conditions without relentlessly reassessing if they are the right metrics in the first place? So if you have to change, then you have to change. And then you have to make sure that it all works out and driving that project success. And then lastly, as a project professional, you have to expand perspective. You have to break those silos. And you have to be in front of your team, of your stakeholders, and looking at the bigger picture. And not just, at surface level, what am I looking at here, right? Like, you have the ability as a project professional to break those silos and be that bridge builder, that connector. And oftentimes, here's my final analogy for you, Sam. Here's the role of the project professional as like you are on top of the mountain and you can see everything, all the moving pieces, right? All the moving pieces down the mountain, they don't necessarily see what's happening across the pond. They only see their lanes. But you, as a project professional, you can see everything. So if anything is broken down or not connecting well, you are actually at that vantage point and you could see everything. And that's why the E makes sense as the framework. And again, it's not about doing more stuff. It's just doing the work that delivers more value. And so it's so applicable, not just for project professionals, but even HR leaders, those that don't even have a PM as a job title, but adopting this mindset, that it will maximize that project impact and grow your ability to lead strategically.
I could not agree more. I love this framework when you first showed it to me because it is so applicable, and the old definition of getting it on time, on budget, with the right resources isn't enough anymore. And I think so many people do rely on saying, I did it on time. I did what you told me to do. I did it for less money than you told me to do, but it didn't achieve what we wanted to, usually because at some point something changed. It made sense when we started the project, but at some point something changed and we failed to adjust to it. And what I love about this, it brings me back to a project that we rolled out last year at a company called Red Ventures. And the whole goal, we're in this AI boom right now, was to upskill our entire workforce. So we had a lot of college kids coming in, and we would typically train them for 3 to 5 years to become directors of digital marketing. And we knew that skills needed to change, and we had to train people. Easy enough to say, okay, let's just put them through training, through AI training. I could have done that on time, under budget, easily. Task would have been done. What we were running into, though, was the skills of an AI-equipped junior talent were starting to cost more money. And so to go get the talent out of college that we needed to, they were about to make $10,000 to $15,000 more a year than the people that started last year. In a 1-year change, the salary it had increased that much. So your analogy of seeing down from the mountain is interesting, because I'm looking at it from the top saying, we've got people over here about to make $15,000 more a year than people that have 1 more year of experience and came from the same school. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And so just training them won't fix the problem here. So now we need to not just train them, but also think about compensation. And if we think about compensation, we need to think about career laddering. And all of a sudden, this project that was a train people on data literacy skills turned into a complete reorganization of the company and a reorientation. And then as you look at this framework, you could imagine the impact to my CFO and CEO. As I said, I've got 100 people that need to make $15,000 more a year when we're talking about consolidating the business or getting tighter with AI budget. There's a lot of perceptions then that need to change. And so over the course of this 9-month project, we changed the scope and we changed the definition of success 10 or 15 times across the entire project, because we kept bringing people in. We kept aligning and trying to get people to see around the mountain. I love this analogy because it's exactly what was happening. As they started to see more, you get people on board, you have people that aren't on board, but seeing this project, it's all about managing perceptions and getting people to see what they can't see. It's about owning it. Like my job was supposedly to just train people. Turns out my job was to shift the entire organization into a new way of thinking, not just deliver training. That would have been a complete and utter failure. And then reassessing the project parameters. I think this was the most frustrating part of a project, and I think it would be for a lot of folks, is to change the scope or change the alignment. But in 2025, things change constantly. And so to assume that over the course of multiple months, what you thought was true in the beginning is going to be true in the end is set up to fail. There's 0% chance that what you thought 7 months ago is still true today. And then continuing to expand perspective, there are so many downstream impacts to what we do that if you're not seeing those, you're just solving a sliver of the problem and falling into this trap that I know so many HR professionals do, which is, I did the thing. I finished the project. Why am I not getting promoted? Why am I not getting recognized? Why am I not seeing the impact across the organization that I know I should be having? And I think this MORE framework is exactly it, because they're missing these 4 things in addition to just getting their project done.
Absolutely. And that example was spot on. It is because when you think of a project as just someone owning the tasks and shifting your mindset to you are a strategic partner, then at least you have this MORE to keep in mind as you're moving forward with your plan, right? Like you didn't even realize the MORE framework existed, but you were already doing it, Sam. But you're spot on there, though, that most of the time that's what's missing. We're really focused on, did I get it done? Did I tell the people that need to know, what they need to do? But if you just go a step above that and manage the perception and expand perspective and do this framework, then you will realize how much more value you're bringing to the organization and to your own team. And project management skill, again, I will say it the last time, that it is industry agnostic. It is, in my opinion, even role agnostic. It's in fact, it's one of the top skills that LinkedIn has named in 2025 that is, needed in the workforce. And in our recent talent gap report, we're looking at 30 million new project professionals will be needed by 2035. We have so many projects transformation going on, and more projects mean more project professionals need to get into this industry and into this profession, because who will be leading those projects in the first place? And so as an HR professional, you will definitely benefit from a lot from having those skills with you in whatever field you are in whatever industry that you are in.
I think that's spot on. I can't believe the numbers. It makes sense that like almost all work is turning into project work, because especially with the advent of AI, so much other work is going to be automated, but projects still need to be completed to move organizations forward. And it is like, I know we talked about a couple of success stories, but I also like this framework because you can look at it at the end of a project that maybe didn't go how you wanted it to go and go, where did I miss? And as we're talking, I've got about 35 other projects where I'm like, oh, we missed the M or we missed the O. And you can tell the success of a project and use this almost as the audit to go, I'm feeling like it should have had a bigger impact or done something different. It doesn't feel good now. Why doesn't it feel good? I'm betting it's one of these 4 things that is the audit to say you missed something along the way.
And I'll give you one last example on that. There was a stakeholder that I was working with before, and when I left the company, we still were friends, and we would talk and just chat. And so I was just asking her, how are your projects? You're working with project managers, my former teammates. And so I asked her, how are the projects going? And she does have a project management training, actually. She didn't take her certification, but she had a training, so she understands the principles, and she's the sponsor of these projects. She was working with 2 different project managers. One project was on time, on budget, on scope, but there was a massive risk that they now had to mitigate. And the other project was behind, but the project manager was able to communicate effectively and quickly to the stakeholders what they need to do next. And when I asked her, like, so which one was the better project, or, and this was way before the MORE framework, the project success. And I was just curious of her experience with the projects. And she even noted that she felt that the other project that was, even if it was delayed and it was not meeting the budget, but because the project manager was able to communicate effectively and quickly so that it can be resolved and gain that confidence with the project team, she thought that that was a better project than the other one, because the other one was just literally just checking off things from the list. And so when this research came out and we developed the framework, I even told our CEO, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many stories about this. This is amazing. And now it's backed by data, right? It's our community telling us truly what the definition of project success is. And I just want to touch on a little bit on AI. You mentioned it earlier. Yes, of course, AI, if you're not learning how to incorporate AI in what you do, you are behind, my friend, right? Like it's a tool to make you, and as a project professional, it's a tool that can help you be better, faster, and focus your energy and attention on more complex problems that require human intervention. So in any role that we have, I think there are additional tools, and whether it's technology tools like AI, that can still help us sharpen our skills and lead with impact, elevate our organization, and even becoming a launch pad to your own career growth and leadership, because you are embracing all the tools available to you so you can grow as a professional.
It's amazing. I know we could talk projects forever. I could keep going with you forever, but we gotta wrap it at some point. But if folks are interested in learning more, where can they go? How can they learn more about these topics, or learn more from PMI and what you all do to learn these human skills, learn these skills to get better at not just finishing a project, but like achieving actual value add in their organization?
Well, thanks for asking, Sam. I forgot to mention it, that on the screen earlier, there was a QR code.
Back up.
So if you can, please, or if we can post it after this, that QR code will take you to that research. And of course, you can find a lot of other resources on PMI.org. And if you are on LinkedIn, we also have the Project Management Institute page. And if you'd like to connect with me, just look for Karla Eidem on LinkedIn. And I would love to hear more about stories from HR leaders that are either successfully driving projects or even needing some help. We have a community of professionals. We have over 1.8 million professionals around the globe, certification holders around the globe. And there's many people that would be willing to mentor or coach, and even have a place online for a community that can provide answers and just provide you some help as you go through your projects.
That's fantastic. The community is so big. The ongoing education is fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. I know it certainly benefited my career. Love hearing how it's evolving and growing, because I think you all are spot on with where things are going. Thank you so much, Karla, for jumping on, talking us through all of this, and helping HR folks have drive a bigger impact in their careers and in their companies. Thank you again for jumping on.
Welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having me. And Sam, it's never too late to get your PMP. Let me know.
Maybe. Get some more initials at the end of my name there. All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.